you know.
Okay.
The people, these people are from outside
so
Uganda.
this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to try and summarize what you told me, and you can tell me whether I'm correct or not, just so we get the facts right here. You say that there are over 1,000 members of the Hamza Brigade, which is a sort of paramilitary pro-Gaddafi brigade, and that they have attacked the anti-government protesters who had taken control of Misrata, and that you are fighting back with some Kalashnikovs. Is that right?
Yes.
And that the police of Misrata are actually supporting the demonstrators against the pro-Gaddafi Hamza Brigade.
That's right.
Okay.
And I think there is, scenarios going on, you know, that Gaddafi wants to suppress and use whatever power available to him to suppress the revolution before any resolution coming out from the United Nations or let's say tomorrow after tomorrow.
Okay.
Because it's a battle, there is a general attack everywhere.
Okay. Dr. Abdurrahman Al-Sawahli, thank you very much. You've been very helpful, and we hope to possibly hear from you in the future as well. Dr. Abdurrahman Al-Sawahli joining us from Misrata there over the phone. Thousands of Libyans have also been flocking to the border with Egypt. And as we mentioned earlier, Jamal al-Shayal is in Saloum, just inside Egypt at the border. Jamal, what's the very latest from there?
Well, Imran, the traffic of people streaming in has slowed down slightly in the past hour. However, there is still many coming through here, mainly Egyptians, it must be noted, that are fleeing the violence on the other side. There's also an increase in medical aid and other service provisions here by the Egyptian authorities, as well as non-governmental and voluntary organizations. In fact, I'm joined by a group of Red Crescent volunteers, and one of them here is Khalid Abbas, who works for the Egyptian Red Crescent. Khalid, can you tell me exactly what it is that you guys are doing here at the border with Egypt?
Here we are trying to help people that are coming from Libya, escaping from violence there, or fear of to make sure that they are caring about of any violence, and assisting them in injuries, arrange their traveling to their countries, and so.
Khalid, there's several medical convoys that I take it that have crossed over the border and into Libya. What have they taken with them, and how many doctors do you know? Or
I don't know how many doctors, but I know that they took medical assistance, and it's the most medical, I think, but no other. I don't others.
They've taken things like blood and equipment for hospitals, bandages.
No, I know that it's medical equipment. Just that just one I know.
Okay. And if you have any message in terms of, I know it's very dangerous for the doctors who have got there, how far have they managed to reach inside Libya, and is it dangerous for their movements inside?
Of course, the violence spread everywhere in Trablus and Bani Ghazi, where they reach equipment and assistance for them. So wish they came back fine and take care of themselves.
Just a final question, is there a message you have to the international community or the United Nations?
Of course, I wish to do anything to stop the violence against innocent people in Libya, but without interfering of keeping peace forces, maybe out of violence else, but they have to do anything to escape them.
Thank you very much, Khalid. Thank you. So that is the message from some of the humanitarians, Imran, that have made it to the border. And it has to be noted that these are all volunteer groups. They are not supported by any authority or any one government. It is people with their own conscience that has pushed them here. There's also many Libyan expatriates who live across the world, mainly in the United Kingdom, the United States, who have made it here to Egypt to set up their own medical camp and try and create some sort of humanitarian corridor to cross into the border and relieve those on the other side, Imran.
Jamal, just before you go, final question from all the people that you've spoken to that have actually crossed the border there at Saloum over the past few days, from the Egyptians to the Libyans to those giving medical help. Is there a common thread amongst them? And if there is, what is it?
Well, there is definitely, I think it's twofold. One, it is shock, horror and fear at what's going on the other side, and the fact that there is disbelief amongst many people that the world can watch and continue, in many cases, to do business with the Libyan regime, as hundreds, if not thousands, according to some sources. We heard the Italians saying more than 1,000 killed in Libya, and how that can continue to take place whilst the United Nations and the European Union merely meet to discuss what possible action they could take as these people continue to die. The other feeling is that the governments neighboring, particularly Egypt and Tunisia, could possibly face a disaster in terms of trying to absorb the sheer amount of people coming here. Like I say, I mean, these are volunteers who have come to the border. There isn't a United Nations refugee agency here. There isn't any refugee camps here. And Egypt trying to just absorb its own citizens is facing difficulties, and the fear is that once Libyans start flooding in here, the crisis could be further compounded and could multiply tenfold in run.
Jamal, thanks so much for that update from the Egypt-Libya border. Jamal Shayal there. Well, the situation in Libya has forced thousands of foreign workers to flee. James Bays spoke to some of those who gave a harrowing account of the events in Tripoli.
The approach to Tripoli airport. From the sky, the area around the city looks deceptively calm, but witnesses tell us there are checkpoints on the road and panic and fear among the population. Tripoli remains off limits to international media, with foreign journalists denied visas. We touched down in Libya, arriving in transit, spending over 17 hours at the airport. It's a place of chaos. Some passengers have now spent more than 3 days here, hoping to flee the violence and turmoil. Around the airport, television screens have the state TV blaring, a constant stream of Gaddafi propaganda, with pictures of demonstrations in support of the Libyan leader. For now, it's clear this airport and the capital city are pretty firmly under his control. One oil worker who didn't want to have his face filmed until he got on his flight, but who's worked in Libya for 18 years, says the last few days have been most unnerving.
We were trying to get in the terminal building, and maybe 5,000 people out there, and we had a very difficult time pushing and shoving. We're just about at the doors, and we got beaten back. I don't know, military people with batons.
We're now on board an evacuation flight arranged by the British government. When we were on the ground in Tripoli, it was only possible to film using a high-quality mobile phone. It wasn't possible to get the camera out because there were too many security personnel around and people were reluctant to talk to us. Now they're on board this flight, they are at last able to tell us what they saw.
The police officers ran down the Mesran Street and they opened fire on the boys who had no weapons at all. We were on the roof, my colleagues and myself. They saw us on the roof and they opened fire on us as well, and then they threw gas canisters onto the roof, so we got gassed as well.
I heard so many gunfire. The people are on the road, we are scared, we are not to go to outside. We cannot leave the camp. If I go outside,